So,
Morning.
good morning, Martin.
How are you?
So, I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on my cloud bus to do the cloud ride to the Vira.
Lots and lots of interest, of course, around what VMware is doing and what sovereign cloud is bringing to the party. VMware is very much leading the sovereign cloud narrative. And even the likes of Azure, Microsoft, and Google Cloud, and Oracle, and AWS are all trying to play catch up with what VMware has done in the sovereign cloud space.
Yeah, we saw some announcements also from
absolutely,
AWS,
yeah.
Already picking up the term at least. And
yeah. and that's one of the challenges, and I did drop into the Sovereign Cloud Summit yesterday. I couldn't attend it all, unfortunately, and one of the challenges is there isn't really a clear definition of what Sovereign Cloud is. So excuse me, so we're seeing other partners, shall we say, and other competitors, and using that term in a different way that VMware is using it. But VMware, it's not just about data residency; it's about the control as well, the jurisdictional control. And VMware is unique in that space because we're the only major cloud partner, effectively, who can help our customers and our partners deliver jurisdictional control over their data. Because we don't own and operate the clouds. If you think of it in terms of the US Cloud Act, the terminology is own and operate. VMware doesn't own and operate our own clouds. I know we do on AWS, but that's a slightly different offering. But our partners own and operate the clouds in jurisdiction and have full jurisdictional control over the data that they hold for their customers, and that is completely unique from a sovereign cloud story perspective. But it's we live in an age of tech hype and hype cycles, and where there is momentum behind something, and there's a clear drive towards a particular technology or particular architecture, whatever it might be, sovereign cloud in this state. Everyone wants to join that bandwagon. The last 12 months we've seen it with AI. We've seen large language models. And we're seeing it with sovereign cloud as well. People don't want, in the tech industry, you can't afford to be left behind. You have to be seen to be doing something. You have to be seen to be active in a particular space. Otherwise, you become irrelevant very quickly. And we've seen that. We've seen that with with BlackBerry and others, where they become irrelevant almost overnight because something new comes along.
But at least despite all the definitions of sovereign cloud, I really think that the discussion about data and how it's being governed, I think that's a strong point. As you see, as yesterday we saw at the Sovereign Cloud Summit, that's also the European Commission is also looking at all kind of guidelines, but also regulation in the end for this whole data question that we have.
It would be very helpful to VMware because we know that the European Commission very much aligned with our thinking of what sovereign cloud is. We know that, but it would be good if they made a statement about that and actually and said this is from an EU perspective, this is what we perceive as sovereign cloud, and that would be very helpful for us from a VMware perspective. Maybe they'll do that in the future. I know that it is something they've been talking about for some time, but whether they will do it or not, we'll see.
And Martin, about AI, what is VMware doing on that part?
So obviously we've announced in Las Vegas our private AI initiative, and this is effectively the idea where you run the analysis, the training, and the iterative, the fine tuning, and you do all of the iteration of that data set locally where that data lives. So we have a lot of companies at the moment, a lot of customers who collect data in their own data centers and then move that data into public cloud to do analytics, AI-based analytics, machine learning, deep learning, whatever it might be. That's obviously there are whole good reasons why that's not a good thing to do, both from a security perspective, from a privacy perspective, but also from a time and cost perspective. So the ability to run your analytics, your AI analytics, machine learning, deep learning on-prem or even at the edge is very, very attractive. And if you look at either from a government perspective, a regulated industry perspective, or just people who collect data and maintain it in their own data centers, this is an attractive proposition. And the reality is, many hundreds, thousands of VMware customers have been running predictive AI on their VMware infrastructure for a decade or more. It's not new to run these types of analytics on VMware, but with the sort of movement of large language models, and we've seen the generative AI concept explode over the last 12 months, and huge amount of interest in where we're going to go with that.
Yeah.
That is a different type of analytics, far more data heavy, far more computational requirements from an intense computational requirements and GPU requirements around that. Mm-hmm. So VMware is building the concept of private AI, and really that is VMware Cloud Foundation with a predefined stack of all the different components you need, both open source and proprietary from NVIDIA and other GPU vendors, and giving you the ability to build that as a standard architecture.
Okay.
Because there is no one architecture of how you can do analytics on a VMware platform. Yeah. But giving customers a standard approach, giving them reference architectures, giving them what we're calling starter kits, which are basically for developers, how developers can start building against these NVIDIA APIs, etc. Gives them a starting point. So we are basically putting kits together to allow customers to sort of, day one, be able to build this. One of the challenges, of course, with this is that actually getting the hardware, the GPUs, is quite challenging. I spoke to a partner just last week, I think it was, and they were looking forward to getting their NVIDIA A100s sometime in December 2024. Okay. So it's, at the moment we're working with and we're building these environments with customers who've actually been doing this already.
Yeah.
Because they've got the hardware, they've got the skills in house, but they haven't had a standardized approach to doing it. So we're working largely with partners and customers who are already doing this, but obviously want a more standardized approach and a more supportable approach to do that. And the other thing that we're looking at how we're going to figure out and how we're going to deliver, obviously there is synergy between the concept of private AI and sovereign cloud. Yeah, so there's obviously a natural synergy between those two things around data, around running things, data analytics and data sovereignty and digital sovereignty. So we haven't announced anything at Barcelona this year, but it's certainly something I'm working on with the sovereign cloud team about how we fit private AI and deliver that to our partner ecosystem for sovereign cloud as well.
Yeah, because the demand is strong about solutions with AI. Yeah. But it's also in if you want to have data trained that has intellectual property. So you really want to make sure that this data is processed well trained on the models that you want to use. Yeah.
And I got asked this question yesterday at, I think it was at one of the partner events I presented at, about connected, disconnected cloud. Yeah. And there was a concern that VMware is very much going towards everything has to be connected to the cloud, vCenter has to be connected to the cloud, and the reality is about 30% of VMware customers operate their environments in a disconnected manner or largely disconnected manner. Think that we run VMware on nuclear submarines, we run it on oil platforms. We talk to customers about running it on satellites. And it's that type of
VMware is everywhere.
It is literally everywhere. So there was some concern raised where everything has to be connected, and in order to get the new functionality, and the reality is that's not going to be the case. VMware is very much aware that. Again, it varies region to region, but on average, about 30% of our customers do not give public access to their cloud management cluster, for example.
So one of the control rooms should be
exactly. So it's so and all of these things are interconnected, of course. The concept of sovereign cloud, private AI, disconnected cloud, and they're all sort of connected in various ways. But the aim, and it's always been the aim, this is not new. VMware gives you that flexibility to be able to design something that your business requires. With the obviously the advent of public cloud over the last 10 years, the real concept is we provide a service, you can come and consume that service and use it, to build business value. Yeah. With VMware, the customer can build what they need to deliver that business value in a customized way. We even see some organizations outgrowing public cloud Dropbox is probably the most famous example where they move out of Amazon because S3 is so restrictive in its APIs they can't innovate on that platform. So they now build their own, S3 equivalent infrastructure and their own connectivity around the US and globally to deliver their Dropbox service. So there are, and these are quite rare examples where effectively a business outgrows public cloud. So it's, again, what gives business value? What is delivering business value, and what business value do you get from different applications and where they run? Huge value in public cloud for certain types of applications, and in the types of applications there's no real value.
Yeah.
So it's it's what I like to call the what, where, and why of application placement. What have I got? Where am I going to put it, and why am I going to put it there?
Yeah, that's a good start off in a cloud journey or
absolutely
architectural design that you want to make.
It's part of the whole migration pattern for cloud, isn't it? Whether you think of it from the Gartner's 5 R's, 7 R's, whatever you want to count them. What have I got? Where do I want to run it, and why do I want to run it? And at the end of the day, everything should map to business value.
Of course.
And that might be cost, and sometimes paying a bit more is worth paying a bit more. But what is the business value of running it here versus running it here?
Managing risks.
Absolutely, there's lots of reasons. Sovereignty comes into that as well. And this plays into even another related subject, and it's something I presented on yesterday twice. Repatriation.
Interoperability.
We are seeing an increase. It's not a massive increase, but we are seeing growing numbers of workloads that have been moved to public cloud over the last few years, being repatriated. And that's in some cases that's repatriated on-prem, but also quite commonly where people are building private infrastructure on colo because they want managed services, but they want to be a more controlled managed service environment. So we're certainly seeing a reasonable level of increase in repatriation. VMware's working, we already have tooling to help customers do this. HCX has the OSAM functionality that allows you to migrate from Azure VM, Hyper-V, Nutanix, KVM, etc., back to VMware. But we're building some additional functionality to simplify that process as well. That's roadmap at the moment. But the engineering has begun on that. So some nice, very simple workflows within HCX Plus to migrate from workloads from let's say EC2 to VMware.
Okay.
Of course, there are some limitations. It depends on how you build the application. There are. We are talking about straight VM type container type applications. If you've started integrating into very native Azure services or AWS services, that's a whole different challenge from a repatriation perspective.
Cool. So the cloud smart strategy and putting
absolutely.
In the cloud is of course.
VMware's marketing team call it cloud smart, but it's the adding intelligence into what decisions you make. And the other thing I spoke about quite a lot yesterday was sometimes it's okay to change your mind and move back a different direction. So if you make a decision to do, I'm going to move these 10 applications to Google Cloud. And, whether it's performance, whether it's digital sovereignty, whether it's operational issues, you choose to move those applications back. That shouldn't be seen as a failure. No. It should be seen as a process of learning about what works well where. Again, back to my analogy, why, where, and when. So you shouldn't think of moving an application to another location and then moving it back as a failure. It should be just seen as part of the process of developing business value for those applications.
It should be as easy as changing a subscription that you have for maybe your TV or internet connection.
And then,
but that's changing cloud is always seen as a big migration project.
And it is.
If you could take that away.
Yeah, there are a lot of organizations now who want to be able to build applications completely agnostically from cloud.
Yeah.
And there are lots of tech out there. You know, there's Terraform, there's Puppet, there's stuff that you can take anywhere. And of course, we have the VMware Anywhere model as well, with VMware on any public cloud, and that's attractive for for some customers, particularly where they want to maintain that hybridity with on-prem. But there's no easy way of migrating back and forth from clouds. There is. We did have some statistics, and I think it was something like the average cost of moving an application into public cloud was something like $600 or $800. Okay. Moving it out was sort of $3,600. Yeah, so because every application,
one way
exactly. It's the Hotel California analogy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But every when you're doing cloud exit migrations, every application has to be addressed at the application level, because the databases, the way the application is architected, are all highly relevant. Whereas when you're moving into cloud, it's more of an infrastructure play. You're moving from one infrastructure to another infrastructure. When you're moving out of public cloud, you have to think of that application layer, and sometimes rebuilding stuff is much quicker than migrating it. We've seen that certainly with some of our big enterprise accounts where they've moved large-scale workloads, large numbers of workloads on the public cloud, for whatever reason, costs or sovereignty. Actually, just rebuilding stuff, moving the data that you need to move, and rebuilding it. In many cases, is just easier than migrating it.
Okay, it's interesting thought that it's like rebuilding instead of renovating your home.
But if you have a lot of automation around how your applications are deployed and scaled, if you have them as templates in some sort of app automation tool, and there's dozens of those out there, then actually in some cases it can just make more sense to just redeploy. Pull the data from somewhere else and just rebuild the app.
If it's possible to get the data out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing.
You're absolutely right. So again, this comes down to application architecture and making good choices about what databases and file systems you use. If you choose proprietary databases and proprietary file systems,
it's get challenging.
You're building the mainframe system of the future. Is basically what you're doing. That an application that uses AWS Aurora and other AWS proprietary services. That application, in all likelihood, will never be able to leave AWS, even if you choose to not run anything else there. You're always going to have that application. So just like all the major banks still have mainframe systems, and insurance companies have mainframe systems from 40 years ago, that is going to be the mainframe of the future.
It's so cool.
It's funny how technology works in cycles, isn't it? I guess life does in general, but
we have to solve some problems, and then we see another coming in. I think it's how it relates to that.